Hey everybody, welcome to DCARI's 18th virtual fire investigative training session. Today we have David Klitsch, and Dave is a member of the Pennsylvania Association of Arson Investigators, and he's going to take the next hour and a half or so and talk to us about firefighter arsonists. So Dave, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Bill. It's my pleasure to be here. We're going to talk tonight about a very sensitive topic, firefighter arson. So, as Bill had shared, this program comes to you through the Pennsylvania Association of Arson Investigators. So, what I want to share with you, hopefully at the end of this program, you'll have a better understanding of the firefighter arson problem across the country. And believe me when I tell you that this is a problem. We'll talk about some common motives of fire setting behavior. Why do these firefighters cross the line and set fires? We'll describe what effect firefighter arson has on the community and the fire service. Make no mistake about it. When these individuals cross the line and set fires, and subsequently they're identified and charged for these fires, it impacts the community and the fire service as a whole very greatly. So we'll identify some arson statutes. Obviously, there are laws in our great land that prohibit this type of behavior. We'll describe the basic profile of the firefighter arsonist. You know, what you folks should be keeping your eyes out for. Explain the fire service's responsibility in preventing firefighter arson. You know, each and every firefighter has a responsibility to assist in preventing firefighter arson. If you see something that doesn't look right, or you hear a comment made by a fellow firefighter, it is your duty to act and report that information. So you have that information. What do you do with it? You report that to law enforcement, or you report that to the fire service leaders. So let me give you a little bit of history about the program. So as Bill mentioned, my name's David Klitsch, and I'm the creator of the Hero to Zero Firefighter Arson program that's being presented to you right now. I want to take a few minutes to explain the history of the program. As a former Pennsylvania State Police Deputy Fire Marshal, my primary responsibility was to investigate fires and explosions in northeastern Pennsylvania. Back in the early to mid 2000s, I had a rash of intentionally set fires that were found to have been started by firefighters. These firefighters were subsequently arrested for these crimes. Most of them were sent to prison. I myself was a volunteer firefighter, so the actions of these firefighters affected me as well as all other firefighters. I wanted to try and bring awareness to this dark secret within the fire service, and to encourage firefighters who have open eyes and ears, and to speak up if something doesn't seem right, and to take action to preserve the good nature and rich history of the fire service. As a result, I made dozens of phone calls to folks all across the country seeking an existing program to address the issue of firefighter arson. I located two people that put together a short program. They kindly provided their material to me to use or include in a new program. The Pennsylvania Association of Arson Investigators fully supported this venture, and is a driving force behind the delivery of this program that began back in 2007. Since then, the program has been delivered to thousands of firefighters from all across the country. This program has been responsible for many subsequent firefighter arrests as firefighters stood up and took action. I ask that you pay close attention to the information I will be presenting to you. I prefer if you did not take notes, as I want you to have your eyes and ears wide open for this entire program. Additional information regarding this program can be located at www.paai.org. That's the website for the Pennsylvania Association of Arson Investigators. Thank you for your interest in the program, and together we can make a difference and reduce the number of firefighter arsonists that put all of us in danger. So let's get started. In recent years, the frequency of firefighters being charged and arrested for the crime of arson has continued to plague the fire service. Just think back of recent TV news footages, online articles, Firehouse website, firehouse.com website, announcing these arrests of firefighters. So given the far-reaching effects that criminal fire behavior by firefighters can cause, awareness, education, action, and accountability are clearly necessary. My friends, there is a problem. There is a problem in the fire service, and action needs to be taken. Fortunately, many fire departments never experience having. So fortunately, many fire departments will never experience having a member arrested for arson, but those that do, the impact is always significant. Think about it, my friends, when a firefighter is charged with arson, it is embarrassing to the point where you might not want to wear your fire department shirt. You might not want to wear your fire department jacket. It is embarrassing. Hopefully your department does not experience a case of firefighter arson. People can die or be seriously injured, including fellow firefighters who responded to the call. It could be as simple as a traffic accident, a crash of the apparatus responding to this intentionally set fire that a firefighter set that could result in firefighter injury or death. Homes and businesses can be destroyed and have long-lasting negative effects. You know, firefighters may set a fire, may set a dumpster fire, it could spread to an adjacent structure, could be in a commercial setting, could be row homes, could take out the whole block. No one knows. An arsonist from within the fire department can disgrace the whole department, and their actions can harm public trust. Many fire departments across the country are volunteer, and they rely on generous donations from residents and taxpayers of their municipality. Make no mistake about it, when firefighters are arrested for setting fires, it impacts their fundraising efforts. So this is a problem the fire service does not need or want. And everyone in the fire service must find a solution to this problem, as it hurts the entire fire service family, not just the fire departments that are involved. So the goal of the program is to provide you with basic information about the problem of firefighter arsonists, its effects, what can be done to successfully address the problem. And that's through education, training, and appropriate criminal background and reference checks. They're key components to this successful recruitment and retention program. I am well aware that volunteer fire departments across the country are hurting for manpower, but you cannot lower your standards and just bring in anyone off the street. There needs to be background checks done. The departments need to make sure that the new member coming in does not have a troubled past. The department does not need that. So let's talk about some NFPA stats. In 2019, a fire department responded to a fire somewhere in the United States every 24 seconds. That's a pretty astounding number, causing just under $15 billion in damage. That is certainly an astounding number. So fire departments are on the move all across the country, all the time. So public fire departments responded to 1.3 million fires in 2019. That's virtually the same number as the prior year. And these fires resulted in just under 4,000 civilian deaths and just under 17,000 injuries. So there's a lot going on. Continuing on with statistics, according to the latest information on fires set intentionally, on average, arson causes approximately $1 billion in direct property damage, hundreds of deaths, and over 1,000 injuries each year from fires that are intentionally set. Now this data is not specific to firefighter arson. This is just dealing with fires that are intentionally set by everyone. So the United States has the highest per capita arson rate in the world, in the entire world. It's the leading cause of fires. Arson's the leading cause of fire in commercial buildings and the second leading cause in residential fires. So more than 2.4 million fires occur annually in the United States, causing approximately 6,000 deaths and billions of dollars in damages. Some pretty staggering statistics. An estimated 100,000 fires are deliberately set and caused over $1.5 billion in property damage. So the bomb arson and tracking system through the ATF, commonly referred to as BATS, they collect data on each and every fire. So in 2019, the ATF reports there were just under 7,000 incidents classified as incendiary, meaning an intentionally set fire or an arson, that accounted for 28% of all fires reported. And the total amount of damages for all this was 952 million, just under 1,000 injuries. Now, keep in mind, it's my understanding not all agencies utilize BATS as a data collection point. So you can see here, here's a graph indicating those statistics. So we have just over 8,000 accidental fires, just shy of 7,000 incendiary or intentionally set fires. And then we have another almost 8,000 either under investigation, combined under investigation, undetermined. So, I would present to you that the number of accidental fires and incendiary fires are actually greater than what's shown here. So from BATS, here's some numbers dealing with injuries. You could see fire service injuries, law enforcement, fire service injuries. 80 firefighters were injured. For accidental fires, intentionally set fires, 22 firefighters injured. Continuing on with the BATS data, some damages. Accidental, 260 million. Potentially set, 101 million. Undetermined, 427 million. So once again, I present to you that much of the undetermined value, the 427, some of that will be split between accidental and incendiary if the investigator was able to identify or classify the fire. So why don't we talk about this stuff? Why don't we talk about firefighter arson? We don't, because it's not fun stuff. It's embarrassing. The fun stuff is, I was on the roof, I cut the vent hole, I had the first line through the door, I rescued the victim, drug him out, I saved a cat, I cut somebody out of a car. That's the fun stuff that firefighters talk about. We don't talk about, a firefighter setting a fire because it makes us uncomfortable, because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. So it's an issue that the fire service as a whole has been practicing avoidance with. So if we turn a blind eye and we make believe it doesn't exist, hopefully it goes away, right? It doesn't go away. So back in 1995, the National Volunteer Fire Council conducted a study, and it was titled Fire Setting Firefighters, the Arsonists in the Fire Department. So take a minute or so to read this. So the highlight of that paragraph is right in the center. To ignore the problem or suggest that it does not exist will only increase the damage caused by the arson firefighters involved, as well as destroy the morale of the other firefighters in their department. We must talk to our members about firefighter arson. We must investigate, charge, and convict those that are committing this crime. So that's from a study back in 1995. 26 years later to the present year, 2021, everything in that paragraph holds true. So firefighter arson is a long-standing problem that impacts fire departments and communities across the nation. And history suggests that firefighter arson is not a new phenomenon. It's been around for a long, long time. In fact, the number of media reports suggests there are likely over 100 arrests per year. There's some posters that are available through NVFC. So is this a local or national problem, do you think? I hope you're saying it's a national problem. And it's even beyond national. So the incidence of illegal fire setting among the nation's fire and rescue personnel is not known precisely. We don't know. We can't say, oh, geez, the northeast quadrant of the United States is more prevalent to firefighter arson versus the southwest. We don't have that data, but rest assured, it is all over. So exact statistics are skewed since the reporting of firefighter arson arrests are limited. So when a fire is investigated, it's found to have been intentionally set. Therefore, it's a crime. It's investigated by law enforcement, and it is reported on UCRs, which is Uniform Crime Report. So it would go down in the Uniform Crime Report and be reported to the FBI as an arson. Unfortunately, there is no subcategory for arson to indicate whether that arson was committed by a firefighter. So that's what I mean when I say the exact statistics are skewed. We don't have the data. We don't have the breakdown of the number of arsons reported to the FBI, how many of those arsons were committed by firefighters. So there's also a lack of data available about arsonists who are public safety personnel, since the subject's occupation affiliation is often lacking. This, unfortunately, this is not limited to fire service. I've been involved in investigations when I was with the state police here in Pennsylvania that involved police officers on midnight patrol setting fires. So it's not just limited to firefighters. So think about this: outside the United States, in Australia, there was Strike Force Toronto was set up by the police to investigate the causes of bushfires in that state, AKA brush fires. At least in my part, it's referred to as a brush fire. So approximately 1,600 suspicious in its first 3 years of operation. 1,600. It's amazing. As a result, 50 people were charged. 11 of them were members of the volunteer fire service. 11 of them. So here's a rather recent one from 2019 in Australia. A 19-year-old volunteer set multiple bush and grass fires. He responded to put them out. That action is very common. He charged with 7 counts of deliberately setting fires over a 6-week period, and subsequently arrested. He was arrested after setting another fire. So moving back to the United States here. Here are some headlines out of Pennsylvania, Montgomery County, down outside of Philadelphia in Hatboro. There was a 29-year-old volunteer. He worked as a loss prevention officer, AKA security guard, at a department store in York County. He set fire to stuffed animals. He extinguished it with a fire extinguisher and reported the fire. So essentially, he was acting as a hero. So he was charged with arson and related offenses. He pled guilty and he was sentenced to 3 years probation. Here's one out of Indiana County in Pennsylvania, which is out west, out near Pittsburgh. 19-year-old volunteer. He planned with another firefighter to set fire to a barn and to steal the emergency lights from another firefighter's pickup truck. He set fire to a barn that killed 2 Arabian horses and also set a storage shed on fire. He too was arrested. Here's one in Monroe County, Barrett Township. This is Monroe County. It's in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. 24-year-old volunteer firefighter. He admitted to setting 13 fires. He applied to and was rejected membership in a volunteer fire company where he was residing. He then relocated to another municipality and made application to the local fire company. He lied on the application and was voted into the company. He was charged. You will see him in a video coming up here later in the program. But the takeaway from this example is he applied to and was rejected membership in a volunteer fire company. They rejected his membership because they suspected he was responsible for some brush fires in the area. And that's why they did not, that particular fire company did not accept him into the volunteer fire company. He then relocated to another location, another municipality, made application to the local fire company, and they accepted him in. The problem is where he relocated to, that fire company never reached out to any of the fire companies in the county. And we're going to talk about that here in a little while. You need to open up the lines of communication between the fire companies. Here's one out of Schuylkill County. This too is in like the eastern section of Pennsylvania. 19-year-old volunteer firefighter, 19 and 20-year-old. Both men set 6 fires in 9 days, including barns, houses, and brush. After setting the fires, the men would race to the scene and put them out, even when their companies weren't summoned or were called off. That, my friends, is a clue. That is a clue. If firefighters race to the scene and put the fire out, even when they're not called, that is a clue. You need to report that particular action. Brownstown, Pennsylvania, 18-year-old volunteer set fire to one room Amish schoolhouse. He claims to have discovered it. That too is a very common theme. He called 911 after setting the fire and en route to the fire station. Lower Yoder Township in Pennsylvania, 19-year-old volunteer set fire that damaged a house and a business. He took flares from the fire station to set the fires. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've had firefighters that I arrested throughout my career that took flares from the fire station. So he got an adrenaline rush from watching the fires and participated in putting them out. Most times, those firefighters that cross the line and set the fires, they will subsequently respond with the fire department and engage in fire suppression activities. At York County, a 39-year-old career firefighter from Maryland. He was a volunteer here in Pennsylvania. He's with the department for more than 19 years. He was a fire service instructor. He set his own vehicle on fire. Kidder Township, Carbon County. I arrested these 3 members out of the same volunteer fire company. Rash of fires over a short period of time. They consisted of abandoned vacant structures and a brush fire. The incendiary device was obtained and built at the fire station. These guys built the incendiary device at the firehouse. They set the fire because they were bored and they wanted action. One of the firefighters, and you will hear the actual 911 call here shortly, he reports the fire. And when I interviewed these 3 guys, one of the guys told me that he wanted to die in the fire as a line of duty death. He wanted to die a hero. He did not die a hero. He went to prison instead. Another one out of Carbon County, 19-year-old volunteer. He set 3 fires over a 10-month period, one of them which damaged a commercial occupancy. He stole some money out of a locker at the fire station. He needed to pay his insurance bill. When he finally confessed to me, he told me he wanted to prove to fellow firefighters that he could do the job. Here's an interesting one. 52-year-old volunteer. That is not the norm. You'll see, we'll talk about the age range here, but he falls outside of the age range. Although he's been a firefighter from the early 70s and he was suspected of fires way back in the day. So he was arrested in 2008 after surveillance, which consisted of aircraft as well as ground, witnessed him setting a brush fire. He was immediately arrested, taken into custody and interviewed. He admitted to 11 fires, including a barn that paralyzed the volunteer fire captain of the Warrior Run Fire Company after a portion of the barn collapsed on him and another firefighter. So he subsequently pled guilty and he faced 242 years in prison. So subsequently, he was sentenced to 12 to 25-year prison term. Outside of Pennsylvania, Manhattan, 2 FDNY firefighters were arrested for setting a fire at the fire station. They used gasoline and they said, it was just a prank. It's just a prank. Harris County, Texas, there were 2 volunteers set fire to 7 vacant homes. Other firefighters suspected firefighter arsonist and alerted police. That, my friends, is key right there. Other firefighters suspected firefighter arsonist and alerted police. They indicated they were bored and looking for action. Hopefully, you folks are seeing a pattern here. So the problem, it's a complex one. I do not have the answer. If I could look in a crystal ball and come up with an answer to this problem, I would certainly put that answer forward to solve it. So arson in the United States, according to NFPA stats, property damage is up, incidents are down. While a comprehensive study is not available, we do have some data. There was a study conducted by Tim Huff and Gus Gary from the National Center for Analysis of Violent Crime. So the research conducted in the early 1990s suggests that a telltale sign that a firefighter may be setting fires is a sudden increase in nuisance fires within a company's first due area. So what I'm referring to as nuisance fires are going to be rubbish fires, trash fires, dumpster fires, those types of fires, brush fires. The research also indicates that firefighter arson offenders tend to be relatively new to the department, typically less than 3 years as a member. So think about the new folks in your department. You know, what do they need to go through in that 3-year period? New members. There's probably an orientation period. They need to go to the fire academy. They need to get their basic firefighter training completed. So they're learning these skills. They're training at a fire training center. So now they have all these skills and training and education that they want to put in use. So the FBI study of 25 cases of firefighter arson in 7 U.S. states and 1 Canadian province showed that the #1 motive was excitement. Excitement. Remember back in my examples a few slides ago, they were bored and they wanted action. They were bored, they wanted excitement. So excitement is the #1 motive, especially among young firefighters who were eager to put their training to practical use and to be seen as heroes to fellow firefighters in the community they serve. So firefighter arsonists often escalate their fire setting behavior over time. Firefighter arsonists, as is typical of most arsonists, generally start with nuisance fires such as dumpsters, trash piles, or vegetation. Eventually, the firefighter arson graduates to other targets that may have been damage potential, such as abandoned vehicles or unoccupied structures. And my experience in the last 26 years investigating fires is just that. Most of these firefighter arsonists follow this pattern. They start with the nuisance type fires. The firefighters from Kidder Township, when they subsequently confessed and I interviewed them, I asked them why they picked those specific buildings. And they said, well, because they were abandoned and fallen down. And in their mind, they felt that they were doing the community a service by burning them down. So one of the primary motives for firefighters who commit arson is to be seen as a hero. They may be the first to call in a fire, the first on the scene, one of the most eager, excited, enthusiastic members of the response team. They could be the first one through the door with the hose line, the first one on the roof with an axe or a chainsaw. Their main reason for lighting the fire is so they can appear as a hero, either by being the first to spot the flames or by rescuing people and saving property. There's one particular case that comes to mind that I did not put in the program. This happened out in Columbia County, Pennsylvania, out near the center of the state. And it was actually a husband and wife team of volunteer firefighters. They set a fire to an occupied dwelling, single family dwelling. an elderly couple lived there, and they barely escaped with their lives. And subsequently, when they were arrested, I believe it was the husband, one of them said that they wanted to rescue someone from a fire and be a hero. They too are spending decades in prison. So this problem of firefighter arson, it's unacceptable to the fire service. There is no room for it. Do not condone it. Prevent it if possible, and help be part of the solution. And by sitting here and taking this program right now, you are being part of the solution. And I thank you for that. So a criminal investigation will be conducted. There will be no special treatments for firefighters. In fact, the investigation may be more aggressive. Fellow firefighters and officers will be interviewed. Family and friends will be interviewed. Your every step will be examined, scrutinized, and challenged. You know, remember, Big Brother's watching. There are video cameras everywhere these days. Fire investigators may consist of local fire investigators, county fire marshals, state fire marshals, or investigators from ATF. So the arrests, the offenders will be prosecuted. Where I come from, there is zero tolerance for this type of behavior. The district attorneys and the prosecutor's office will be involved. The arrests will be reported to the media. You'll be the top story in the news, the 6 o'clock news, the 10 o'clock news. You'll be the top story on the online newspaper website. We'll be talking about you on the radio stations.
I'm Michael Greek. I'm the District Attorney of Carbon County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm personally grateful to all the men and women who serve as volunteer firefighters and protect our communities throughout Carbon County and this nation every single day. Your duty, courage, and commitment provide the very best example of what it takes to be a firefighter. These attributes, though, can become very fragile when there's a momentary lapse of judgment or common sense when a firefighter commits an arson. Firefighter arson is a very serious problem faced by fire companies across the United States, resulting in hundreds of arrests every year. There's nothing more disturbing when an arson case comes into the district attorney's office. But it's especially troubling when it involves a firefighter whose responsibility is to protect and save lives. This violation of duty and responsibility is taken very seriously. Firefighter arson is a felony that destroys departments, communities, and lives. Don't do it. The technology and methods to determine not only the cause of the fire, but the identity of the arsonist are outstanding today. Know this, our fire marshals and investigators will conduct a thorough investigation of all fires, and arsonists will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. They won't receive any special treatment just because they are a firefighter. Be safe, be smart. Thank you for your service.
So I'm sure that there is the prosecutors and district attorneys across this great country share the very same opinion that District Attorney Michael Greek just shared with you all. So make no mistake about it. Arson is a violent crime, just like rape, murder, and robbery. So let's talk about some penalties for this violent crime. Here in Pennsylvania, Title 18, the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, it could range from a felony 1, felony 2, or felony 3. And there you see the consequences, potential sentence and fine for each of these graded felonies. So a felony 1 is up to 20 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. Felony 2, up to 10 years in prison and $25,000 fine. And felony 3, up to 7 years in prison $15,000 fine. It's a lot of time to be away from your family, a lot of money to pay back. So the penalty in the federal system, maximum 20 years in prison with a 5-year minimum. Personal injury to a person occurs, maximum sentence is 40 years in prison with a 7-year minimum. That too is a lot of time to be away from your family. So arson's a crime of detection. If there's no investigation, how could there be a determination that this is an intentionally set fire? Every fire needs to be investigated. You pick up the phone, you utilize your radio, and you request the fire investigator to the scene. Investigators will turn up signs of firefighter arson. So let's talk a little bit about motivation. So a motive is defined as the reason for setting the fire, something that prompts a person to act in a certain way. That is the motive. Sometimes motive and intent get confused. Intent is the deliberateness of the act. So motive, we heard examples where firefighters set fires because they're bored and they want excitement. So boredom and excitement would be the motive, and the intent is to destroy the building that they are destined to set on fire. So here's some individual motives: fraud and profit, some crime concealment. Let's say the firefighter forcibly enters an abandoned building or an occupied building, doesn't really matter, and removes some items in there and sticks them in his vehicle, and then sets the building on fire. By setting the building on fire, he would be potentially concealing the crime of burglary or theft. Spite revenge is another potential motive. I'm fully aware that the volunteer fire service, many times elections are held, and unfortunately, it's a popularity. It's based on popularity. People's feelings get hurt. Potentially that could play into the spite revenge motive. Some civil disorders. We don't see that too much around here regarding firefighter arson. So vanity or recognition, vanity, the hero syndrome. Remember the security guard that worked at the store that set the fire and subsequently put it out? He's acting as a hero. He intentionally sets the fire. He miraculously discovers it. He takes actions to extinguish it, and then he reports it. So, he might be looking to save his job. I've had cases before where security guards have done that, and subsequently when they confess, we ask them, why did you do that? Well, I wanted to prove that they needed security here because they were talking about laying us off. Actions of juveniles is another motive. So why do firefighters commit arson? So someone who likes to be the hero. I think by now you folks get a good sense of the hero syndrome. So he or she may be the reporting party. So this is one of the firefighters from Kidder Township, Louis Troll, and this is the 911 tape when he reports the fire.
Wednesday, June 7, 2.
What's your emergency?
How you doing? My name is Louis Troll. First name is Louis, L-O-U-I-S.
Okay.
Last name Troll, T-R-O-E-L-L. I'm a firefighter from Cedar Township, District 18.
Okay.
I'm going to report a truck fire.
Where at?
940. It used to be the bare necessities. I don't have a portable enough that I would have grabbed.
940.
The bare necessities. Like I'm a firefighter for Kidder Township, District 18.
What's your name?
Louis Troll.
Oh,
My unit number is 1809. All right.
okay.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Louis Troll's 911 call. If any of you are 911 dispatchers you should probably be shaking your head right now because of how Lewis volunteered all that information without being prompted. I occasionally worked the desk as a dispatcher for the state police as part of my duties. And many times individuals out of excitement are unable to answer information, specifically, what's your last name? They'll tell you the last name, but they won't spell it. But this dispatcher didn't ask Lewis anything. Lewis just volunteered all the information. My name is Lewis Troll, and he actually went so far as to spell his name and give his unit number. And Lewis was pretty calm, cool, and collected. Obviously, this was a pretty crucial piece of evidence for the criminal case for Lewis. So, as investigators, it's very important to find out who the reporting party or parties for the fire was. So why firefighters commit arson could be personal goals, could be the person who wants to make the most runs. Volunteer fire services are, becoming creative. They're coming out with, some departments pay members a stipend for making a call, or they provide some type of monetary gift at the end of the year based on the number of runs. That could be part of why they're doing this. So some additional goals. They're bored. The person who wants to prove to others that he or she can do the job. We don't need to think very far back of an example from Carbon County, the firefighter that wanted to prove that he could do the job. Some of them may have psychiatric problems. Someone with a fascination for fire could be a person with low self-esteem or self-confidence. Some psychological needs, the social need of wanting to be accepted by others. The fire service is a great brother and sisterhood. It is genuinely a family. Think about cleaning up all the fire apparatus, for your community parade, dressing in your Class A's and marching down the street, and all your equipment's following behind you. Everybody's clapping and yelling, and the little children have their plastic fire helmets on and they're waving flags. It's a great feeling to be part of the fire service. So the need of wanting to belong to or be identified with a significant group, and certainly the fire service is a significant group. The self-esteem issue of being recognized and praised by others. Think about the newspaper articles for those accidental fires, if you will, in which the fire department responds to and quickly extinguishes the fire, or maybe save a life or cut somebody out of a car. Certainly they are worthy of the praise and recognition that goes along with saving the lives. And here's Lewis.
My name is Lewis Troll. I'm a former firefighter from Carbon County, Pennsylvania. I was asked to be a part of a special presentation on that to coincide of why a firefighter might decide to cross over the line, why a firefighter might want to feel the need to make his own action, make his own call. I became a firefighter because I wanted to help people who were in need. My whole life, I was always caring and I was always giving. And I thought this would be the perfect way to give back to the community. I've taken countless hours of training and attended seminars and such classes in order to obtain the knowledge that one needs to obtain in doing this kind of work. There's no fun in games being a firefighter. Those guys don't get as much credit as they deserve. They put their lives on the line every time that alarm goes off. Actually, me and a couple of my friends were sitting at the firehouse, cleaning up and hanging out like we did all the time. We got on the topic of not having a call, and we needed a call. So we decided to set a brush fire to Pennsylvania State Game Lands, which is right up the road from our firehouse. We tried twice in the same night, but we were unsuccessful. A couple of weeks later, we were sitting in the same scenario, bored, nothing to do, talking, getting in our heads. Except this time, a brush fire wasn't going to do the trick. This time it was going to be an abandoned house. We made sure the house was completely abandoned and no one was around. Later on that night, we proceeded to the abandoned house and set it ablaze. We then drove to a truck stop that was near the area, and we called the comm center and reported a working structure fire. After the 911 call, we responded to the fire to help put it out. We later on admitted to the events that occurred, and then we were arrested on multiple counts of arson, endangering, conspiracy, reckless, etc. And we were put in prison. I've been in prison for 14 months now, serving a 2 to 4 year state prison term. I don't have the slightest idea where I want to go when I get out of here. My son's growing up without his father. My family's devastated by my actions. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. To anyone who's thinking about you guys out there, you have an oath that you need to uphold, far greater than any other civilian. You take that oath the day you become a firefighter. You need to uphold it. You have standards, higher standards. Look at me, look at where I am. I can't stress enough the importance of it. Just take my advice. It's not worth it.
All right, my friends, hopefully your jaw dropped and your eyes were wide open like you just seen a ghost. If you take nothing away from this program, I sure hope that you take Lewis's advice. I give a lot of credit to Lewis because when I reached out to Lewis and gave him the opportunity to be part of the program, he jumped at this opportunity. He said, Dave, I want to give back. And he did give back by doing this video. A couple of my observations about Lewis's video. In preparing for this prison video session, he said, what am I supposed to say? I said, Lewis, I'm not going to tell you what to say. You speak from the heart and you share with other firefighters the information you want to share with them. So you can see probably at least half, through half of that video, he was reading from a prepared statement. He wrote down some thoughts on the paper. And after that, the paper was on his lap and he was speaking from the heart. Don't do what I did. Don't follow in my footsteps. My son is growing up without a father. I have no idea what I'm going to do when I get out of here. Don't follow in my footsteps. So my friends, once again, if you get nothing out of this program, just please remember Lewis's words of wisdom.
My name is Luke.
So the motivation is usually not intended to be harmful. It's strictly for excitement. Usually no harm's intended. However that one example I shared with you about the husband and wife, they set fire to an occupied dwelling with the hopes of rescuing the occupants. That is out of the norm. So many times it's immature. They may not realize the harmful effects. I mean, think about a flame on a match or the flame on a lighter, how small it is. Many times people don't understand that small flame can kill people and destroy countless buildings. Not realize the severity of the crime being committed. Think about the guys, including Lewis from Kidder Township in Carbon County. They felt that setting the abandoned building on fire was actually a good thing to do to get rid of the building for the municipality. So here's this paper from Tim Huff on fire setting firefighters. So excitement in putting their training to work was the most predominant reasons found in firefighter arson. Excitement in putting their training to work. So, they love the adrenaline rush associated with the lights, the sirens, the air horns. They love being able to put their training to use. So the motives found in firefighter arson include excitement, vanity, which is the hero syndrome, profit and revenge. Excitement, vanity, profit, and revenge. So lone offenders were most prevalent. You know, I guess I'm out of the norm because probably somewhere around half of the firefighters that I arrested operated in, you know, with at least one other person. But, you know, the white paper indicates lone offenders were most prevalent. So less common yet significant are multiple arsonist cases. So the MO, the modus operandi, most set fires to materials found at site. So it's not like the firefighters are bringing a duffel bag of kindling or newspaper or anything like that. They're using available combustible materials found on site. So most fire setting activities started out with the nuisance fires. Remember, you know, nuisance fires are, you know, the dumpster fires, the trash fires, maybe a little shed fire, brush fires, those type of stuff. And the fire setting activities escalated from there in frequency as well as damage potential, you know. So the first fire may have been set to a dumpster, you know, 3 weeks ago, and then maybe another one. And then the frequency would increase. So instead of having one dumpster fire every 3 weeks, it might be one dumpster fire every 3 days. And then the damage potential would increase as well. Most fires occurred at nighttime, right? The cover of darkness. You know, nobody's going to see us. Let's just go do it and get it over with, right? Somebody's always going to see you. Some fires were set in other fire districts when suspicions were perceived by offenders. So that was pretty interesting to me. So so if you have firefighters that might be suspected of setting fires in one municipality, you know, the paper indicates that, you know, it's not uncommon for them to go to an adjacent or close or nearby municipality and set a fire, almost like to try and throw them off, the investigators. So some telltale signs of firefighter arson: an increase in nuisance fires, right? The dumpster fires, the trash fires, the brush fires, and no one calls for an investigation. Remember, my friends, no investigation equals no determination, right? How can we ever determine it's an intentionally set fire if there's no investigation, if nobody ever looks at it? You know, so after the fire's put out, we need to notify the fire investigator. Come figure it out. You guys put it out and let the investigator figure it out. So some other findings: offenders were often fairly new members of the department. I find that to be very accurate. Most group offenders did not have the inclination to set fires prior to joining the department. I find that to be very accurate too. All the firefighters that I've arrested for setting fires, I was unable to ever uncover any fire setting activity before the person joined the fire department.
I'm Judge David Addy of the Carbon County Court of Common Pleas. In this day and age, we have a number of volunteer firefighters who have come before our court system having been charged with arson. And we need to make it very clear that volunteer firefighters are the core of our society. They are the best of the best. These are people who 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, sacrifice their time, their energy, and literally place their lives on the line for the betterment of our community. Every day of the week, these people make the world a better place to live. And by the very nature of their calling, firefighters have taken on a duty and an obligation to serve the community. These cases come before the court and before me, sentencing. At the time of sentencing, Pennsylvania law requires I look at many factors. One of the factors is the impact of the crime on the community. Really, one of the impacts on the community of an arson by a firefighter is the impact on other firefighters, on the respect of the public for firefighters. I must take this into consideration as I mete out sentences in these side cases. I want to make everyone very, very clear that when these cases come before me, I will hand out a sentence that is appropriate and one that truly takes into consideration the honor, the dignity, and the service of all the firefighters out there.
You know, I think it's safe to say that judges across the country share that very same opinion as Judge Addy just shared with you. So let's talk about some effects of firefighter arson, because certainly, cases of firefighter arson do affect folks. So we're going to talk about the effects in the community. So fires that are set by a firefighter or firefighters could result in the loss of life. People could die. It could be just innocent civilians that are in and around whatever's burning. Civilians could become injured. Certainly they're going to sustain loss, property loss. They're going to sustain some financial loss. Could result in increased insurance premiums on their behalf, and it could destroy the community's trust of the fire service. Once again, many volunteer fire services rely on the community in their fundraising efforts to keep the fire company in operation. So let's talk about the effects on the fire service. Loss of life. Could you imagine a fire that was intentionally set by a firefighter that results in the death of another firefighter? I couldn't even imagine. It's bad enough when fellow brother or sister firefighters are injured in these types of fires, but I could not imagine living with that. So the more affects accidents while responding or returning from the fire. It's very commonplace that, when fires are reported, the fire apparatus respond in code 3, lights and siren. It is during these times that it's very dangerous. It's dangerous to be on the road. Accidents happen, and certainly we don't want to increase the risks of those accidents happening because of fires that are found to have been intentionally set by firefighters. So the cost of fire suppression associated with that, fire service it's an expensive business to be in. Equipment gets damaged or destroyed. How about the negative publicity that goes along with cases of firefighter arson? The top story in the news for days on end. Could be possible liability to the fire service. Did the fire service do an adequate background check? Should the fire service have identified this person as potentially being a fire setter? Still more effects in the fire service. Destroys community trust, may influence fundraising. I think I hit that pretty hard so far. An embarrassment to all department members. It might be that bad that you're not wearing your fire department t-shirt or your fire department jacket, or you're taking your license plate off the front of your vehicle because you're embarrassed. Public reaction could result in knee-jerk legislation that would seriously impact the fire service. It only takes one lawmaker's family or friend to be impacted by a case of firefighter arson that may result in some legislation being passed that could greatly impact the fire service. How about the effects on the firefighter arsonist? Embarrassment to family and friends, right? Wow, could you imagine? Your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles sees you as the top story in the news at 6 and 7 and 10 and 11 o'clock. So you will be held accountable for your actions. You will go in front of the judge. You will go in front of the jury. If you're found guilty, you will be sentenced by the judge. You're going to be arrested, convicted, and sentenced. Without a doubt, you'll be removed from the fire department. But at that point, that would probably be the least of your worries. Losses of esteem, loss of belongings, payment of fines, restitution, imprisonment, all of that stuff that goes along with committing a crime, being convicted, being sentenced, and sent to prison. So some more effects. Financial loss, right? You're not going to be able to work when you're in prison. You're going to need to pay restitution. So that's going to be lingering over you. You're going to have a criminal record for the rest of your life. You're going to lose your rights that all ordinary citizens have. May cause family problems. Do you think? Yeah, I think so. and the negative publicity that goes along with that. Now, this is Matthew Greb. This is the firefighter, if you remember early on in the program, that had applied to a firefighter or to a fire department and was subsequently denied membership. He relocated to another municipality and made application. This is him.
He was once a proud volunteer for the Barrett Township Fire Department. Now, he's a prisoner at the Monroe County Correctional Institute. Matthew Greb will spend between 2.5 and 5 years behind bars. Then he faces 10 years of probation. He'll also have to pay more than $200,000 in restitution for the damage his fires caused.
Basically, he convicted himself by confessing to a number of the arsons that he was charged in this case.
In November, Greb pled guilty to setting 4 fires over the past several years. The reason, he said, he had low self-esteem and it made him feel like a hero to help put out those flames. Before his sentencing, Greb told a Monroe County judge he was sorry and tearfully said, "I would just like to apologize from the bottom of my heart." About 30 of Greb's friends and family members came to support him.
He needs support, and that's how he's going to get it, through all the members of his family and co-workers.
They say they believe he knows what he did was wrong and that he will lead a better life after prison. One reason, he's already been through a drug and alcohol rehabilitation program. They also say he's a hard worker and he'll do everything he can to turn his life around.
And I think he's going to get punished for what he's done. And I think there are a small percentage of people in life that can change their lives around. And like the judge said, there are a lot that won't turn their lives around. So I think this is one person that will.
In Stroudsburg, Lori Monteforti, WBRE News.
So here's an interview with retired Fire Chief Paul Reichenbach. Paul retired from the Office of State Fire Commissioner's office. Paul jumped at the opportunity to be part of this program as well. So he's going to share some his experience with you.
I am Paul Reichenbach, Public Education Information Specialist for the Office of the Pennsylvania State Fire Commissioner. During my career as a fire chief, I had the unfortunate experience of being involved with one of my career firefighters who was an arsonist. During a 3-month time span, this firefighter set 17 building fires within our fire district. There was a very devastating impact on the community, on the fire department itself, as well as on me personally. The effect that it had on the community is that at some point the community started to look at the fire department as being less than what probably they should be. The community was obviously apprehensive. Some of them were just very scared that the next fire was going to take place in their home or near their home. The firefighters themselves started to become very concerned with the situation. And at one point, simply because of the number of fires that took place in such a short time span, we had some firefighters who were physically impacted. They were basically exhausted by doing what they had to do. The impact on me personally, and it was very personal, is that I was targeted as a potential suspect for the arson fires. And the rationale behind that is that all the fires took place at night after my normal duty day. And as the fire chief, I went home at night. All of the fires took place within a few blocks of my residence. And quite naturally, I was the first one to arrive on the scene. And generally, that kind of points suspicion at you. It got so serious that the local sheriff's office put cameras outside of my residence to monitor my movements to make sure that I was not the one, in fact, setting those fires. Learning that after the fact was very devastating to me personally. So the impact involved not only me, but the department as well as the community.
That's some pretty amazing information that Paul shared with us. I can add to the information because Paul and I had a discussion at length about his experience and how they ended up getting identifying the career firefighter was they initiated polygraph or lie detector tests to the entire department, and everybody sat and passed the polygraph except this one career firefighter who didn't show up for work the day of his scheduled polygraph. And they ended up going to his home. His wife said he was at work, and subsequently he fled the country. So some actions. The overwhelmingly majority of firefighter arsonists, that being about 90%, return to the scene as part of the fire department response, right? Because they're bored and they want excitement. They want to be able to use their training and skills that they learned. So this high percentage of offender behavior correlates with the high percentage of excitement-driven offenders who seek this type of gratification through response and suppression of the fire. So who's helping you? 16% of the offenders assisted in the investigation of the fires. I have a very vivid memory of a handful of fires where firefighters would show up the day after the fire when I was there and offer information about where they think the fire starts. And of course, I was open to all that information. And I remember one specific case where there was nothing left of this place, and it was essentially in the basement. And the firefighter says that he thinks the fire started at a specific point right outside against the outside wall. And through investigation, interviews, and viewing photographs before the place collapsed, he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right with the origin of the fire, and he knew that because he was the one I subsequently arrested, and he confessed to setting the fire. So this may have been done because of their rank within the department. You know, many times when we as fire investigators go back, you know, a line officer, the chief, or maybe an in-house fire investigator or something, someone will meet us there. So some personal observations. Even if the firefighter arsonist doesn't participate in the origin and cause investigation, he or she will often hang around the investigators to gather information on a direction of the investigation. I find that to be true. Once again, you know, through my experience, I finish an investigation, you know, I'm taking off my dirty coveralls and wrapping up the scene examination, and the firefighters will come over. Well, what do you think? And where do you think it starts? How do you think it starts? So they're very curious. So the fire started where? It's been found that the firefighter arsonist will often be willing to tell you where he or she thinks the fire started. Oddly enough, this person's right 100% of the time because he or she said it. You know, that goes back to the example I just shared with you about the place being in the basement. So 74% of offenders were categorized as pre-planning their behavior, which is why they're so familiar with the circumstances responsible for the fire. Where 22% of the offenders' behavior was opportunistic, meaning they just took advantage of an opportunity. So 74% are pre-planning. So we in the fire service, one of our responsibilities is to pre-plan you know, fire department operations at specific structures. So it's not uncommon for firefighters in certain municipalities to know which buildings are vacant and not unoccupied versus those that are not. So these firefighters are essentially doing pre-planning of their own, except in a criminal way. So all the offenders were operating within an area that was considered a comfort zone, right? Their municipality, their first due area, which is known and familiar to them, in which they would have the opportunity to quickly respond with the fire department once the fire is reported, right? So they're bored, they want excitement, you know, so it's not commonplace that they're going to set a fire in a municipality where they're not going to have an opportunity to use their training, skills, and education. So geographical profiles explain that as a person moves around their community and mental maps develop. Fire setting firefighters develop these mental maps of their community and have identified targets of their fire setting behavior prior to the act occurring. Once again, it comes back to pre-planning. These fire setting firefighters are pre-planning buildings that they may use to execute their fire setting behavior. So an example of that, a typical member of the community may not have taken notice of an abandoned home or business. A fire setting firefighter, as with other serial offenders, will develop a mental map of potential targets throughout their travels in their community, targets that will be beneficial to their specific behavioral motivation. Okay, so especially those abandoned buildings that are somewhat isolated, right? So there's no buildings around. Potentially there's no video cameras, traffic's light. They might be able to get in and get out of there. So the basic profile of a firefighter arsonist, usually a volunteer. That's no big surprise. That's no big surprise because, volunteer fire service make up the majority of the fire service here in the United States. So that's not really a big shocker. Usually a white male. There it is, 17 to 26 years of age. So white male, 17 to 26 years of age. Maybe the highly trained, motivated firefighter of the year type. Now, there's probably some chuckles going on right now for those of you watching the program, especially those that have earned that coveted title of firefighter of the year. And this information in the program is in no way meant to demean that recognition. That is in there because, at least where I come from, many times the firefighter of the year is given to those firefighters that go above and beyond the normal firefighter. And what I mean by that is, these individuals are ones that you can count on to answer the call. They miss very few calls. These are the firefighters that spend countless hours a year in training classes and becoming educated, to learn firefighting skills. So that is what it's meant by that. Because remember, these fire setting firefighters are the ones that are bored and they want excitement and they want to be able to use their training. So if you have a firefighter, that is putting in hundreds of hours of training a year and learning all these new skills, certainly the firefighters want to utilize these skills. So that is what's meant by that. So continuing on with the basic profile of firefighter arsonists, always seem to be at the right place at the right time. How many times does a firefighter actually discover and report a fire? Very few. Normally, anyway. So the South Carolina Forestry Commission, as well as the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, created a basic profile of the firefighter arsonist. And you can see it there, it's side by side. So the left side is South Carolina Forestry and the right side is FBI Behavioral Analysis. So they pretty much mirror one another. So South Carolina says it's a white male, 17 to 26. But the FBI says it is a white male, but it's 17 to 25. So my friends, let's go with 17 to 26. So continuing on, product of a disruptive, harsh, or unstable rearing environment, a bad home life, if you will, poor relationship with the father, an overprotective mother, if married, a poor marital adjustment, a poor marriage, lacking social and interpersonal skills, poor occupational adjustment, employed in low-paying jobs, fascinated with the fire service and its trappings. This may be the firefighter that, has the $500 car and the $5,000 light bar. May be facing unusual stress due to family issues, financial issues, or legal problems they may have going on, and an average to above average intelligence, but poor to fair academic performance in school. This is the basic profile of the firefighter arsonist as described by the South Carolina Forestry Commission, as well as the FBI. So some of you may be familiar with the name John Orr. John was a fire investigator out in California. He had a large arson squad out there. He had a reputation for uncanny instincts about how an arson fire had started. Turned out it wasn't instinct, it was inside knowledge, because he's the guy that set the fires. He may have set as many as 2,000 fires, killing 4 people. So I believe there's a book or a movie out on John Orr. So he's serving a life sentence in prison for his crimes. So continuing on, the basic profile: works in low-paying jobs with low recognition and esteem, therefore joins the fire department for recognition. Think about all the pats on the backs, the good jobs, and all the recognition that goes along with putting fires out and saving lives. Fascination with the fire service. Once again, it could be the person that has the couple $1,000 light bar on, and 14 pagers on their belt, and 3 different scanners in their car. So lack of stable interpersonal relationship. Some more less obvious factors: disruptive, harsh, or unstable home environment as a child, ineffective or absent father, dominant or overprotective mother, and an average intelligence. Shy or ineffective relationships with women, poor marital adjustment if they're married, maybe experiencing unusual personal stress, may use alcohol to release inhibitions when setting fires, right? Liquid courage, that's what it's referred to, liquid courage. Some additional facts and traits: firefighters who commit arson may associate with other firefighters who have similar desire to be a hero or have fascination with fire. Think about those 3 guys, 3 firefighters in Kidder Township. Lewis told you they tried setting a brush fire on 2 occasions in the state game limits by the firehouse. It's not like these 3 guys parted ways after the first brush fire attempt. They stayed as one unit, if you will, and subsequently carried out the crime. Fire departments that have experienced this problem recently are mostly rural with normally low call volume, right? So it comes back to all this training that we're getting, and the actual fire calls themselves, where there's active fire burning, those particular incidents are down. So some additional facts and traits: a sudden increase in the number of small fires, false alarms, bomb threats, similar responses should alert the fire chief to a possible problem. This is why it's important. This is why it's important that the fire department keep good records. An increase in the severity of fires is also a sign. The fire service responsibility in preventing firefighter arson: education, awareness, training, and accountability of all fire service personnel. Education and awareness. That's why we're here. That's why we're here right now, taking this program. Through the vetting of all prospective members. When a new person walks through the door and says, I want to join the fire company, and you hand them an application, that should be the first step. Second step should be a background check on this particular person. Prompt and complete investigations into origin and cause of all fires. Once again, every fire needs to be investigated. You cannot just accept going and putting the fires out and no investigation being conducted. Full cooperation with law enforcement and the prosecutors. So here's the United States Fire Administration report from 2003. There should be 0 tolerance for the degrading and dangerous behavior exhibited by firefighter arsonists. The key to prevention seems to lie in recognizing the problem, acknowledging the serious threat it poses to public safety and to the credibility of the fire service, and improving screening procedures for new recruits, right? Screening procedures. So you got that new member application in your hand. What do you do with it? That's what we're going to talk about right now. Background checks on all personnel. All of the points discussed here may not be possible due to the lack of resources or restrictions of law. And one restriction of law that comes to the top of my mind is juveniles. Juveniles, at least here in Pennsylvania, is considered anyone under the age of 18. So whatever criminal record they may have in their juvenile years under the age of 18 is sealed and protected, and you would not have access to that. But you need to do as much as you're allowed to do based on your local laws and regulations. To do nothing is crazy. It's a huge gamble. So back in 2006, Act 168 was passed here in Pennsylvania, signed by the governor at that point, and that prohibits persons convicted of arson and related offenses from serving as a firefighter within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So it requires an affidavit and a criminal history search be conducted on all members, all new members coming in. But there are some problems with the law. It does not address existing firefighters. So anyone that was a member before this law came into effect gets a pass. And it's not retroactive. So ex post facto clause forbids the enactment of any law which imposes a punishment for an act which was not punishable at the time it was committed. So to go retroactive would be unconstitutional. So law enforcement lacks the power to force the fire departments to mandate the signing of the form or criminal record check. So here in Pennsylvania, if a member comes in, fills out an application, and the fire department elects to not have the affidavit signed by the possible new member or a criminal history check done, there's no teeth in the law. There's no repercussions against the fire department. And the law also lacks rechecks. So let's say I'm a new member, I sign the affidavit, I pass a criminal history check, and now I'm at year 2 and I start, I go on vacation and I set a fire, a little trash fire, while I'm on vacation, get arrested for it. The law does not have any provisions in it for any type of rechecks of the criminal history. The law lacks penalty for a firefighter who continues to function as a firefighter after refusing to sign the form. So there are some issues with the law. Here in Pennsylvania, you can request an online criminal history check through the Pennsylvania State Police, through the Pennsylvania Access to Criminal History, which is referred to as PATCH. So you only need a username and password. You put in the new member's information, and you will be notified if they have a clean criminal history where there's no criminal history, or if they do have a criminal history, they will provide that to you. Also here in Pennsylvania, you can go on to the common police court docket system and just run a name. You can see if someone has had traffic violations. You can see if they were issued non-traffic citations, or there's any civil proceedings, as well as any summary offenses. But this is just another step to take to complete the due diligence of a new member application. FBI searches. Only the subject of an identification record can request a copy of his own FBI ID record. So if you have this new member comes into your municipality that may have moved in from a different state, obviously your state's not going to have any state record of any offenses this person may have been charged with. You might request them to do an FBI search, criminal history search. So they would print out fingerprint cards from the website and have rolled fingerprint impressions obtained. Include the applicable fee in US dollars in the form of a money order, certified check made payable to Treasury of the United States, or you may pay by credit card. And that takes about 3 to 4 weeks to process that. So this is the affidavit here in Pennsylvania. So a dated and signed statement by the person swearing the following: I've never been convicted of an offense that constitutes the crime of arson and related offenses under Pennsylvania Crimes Code Section 3301, or any similar offense under any federal or state law. I hereby certify that the statements contained herein are true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. I understand that if I knowingly make any false statements herein, I'm subject to penalties prescribed by law, including but not limited to a fine of at least $1,000. So that's the affidavit here in Pennsylvania. So think about this: juvenile records are usually not available, nor are they searched during a criminal history search. So, I chatted about that a short time ago. So that's one of the pitfalls that we need to deal with. You could request the person making application for membership sign the affidavit as well as run the criminal history check. I would certainly recommend that. So background checks on all personnel to include criminal history, driving record, right? You don't want a member driving potentially $500,000 to $1 million, if not more, piece of fire apparatus that has a horrendous driving record. You know, maybe this person was involved in multiple crashes, has a couple driving under the influence arrests under their belt, some speeding offenses, some stop signs, reckless driving, etc. Employment history. You know, request their employment history. Are they working as a security guard at this department store? Maybe they are. Maybe it's worthy of finding out. Maybe you make a simple phone call and the manager says, "Oh yeah, he just he located a fire and put it out the other day. We need to call the fire department." Credit history, some references. Call the references. Request references on the application and call the references. I wouldn't want to be the person sitting under deposition, raising the right hand and swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth when you're asked questions about the member application. You know, did you contact the references? No. Well, why didn't you? What are you going to answer? I didn't have time. I didn't think it was worthy. Well, if you didn't think it was worthy, why is it on the application? So my advice to you is contact the references. Request school and college records as well. Medical records, right? You know, this new member, he may have a lingering back problem, might not be able to function as a full-fledged firefighter. And, you know, he might be looking to the fire service to be his ticket for, you know, a lifelong workman's comp claim. Nobody needs that. Also search social media accounts. How easy is that to do these days, right? We all know how to do that. Check the credit records, check with previous fire departments the individual has been associated with. And, you know, pick up the phone. You know, most fire chiefs know the fire chiefs in and around their particular jurisdiction. So if you get a new member, contact the fire chief and said, "Hey, listen, this guy made application. Do you know him? Did you ever hear about him?" You know, you might be surprised to learn that this same member made application in that particular fire chief's department and they turned him down because of some unknown reason. You know, many fire departments or many fire chiefs in a particular county have a fire chiefs association. I think it's a good idea to take a list of new members to the meeting and share it amongst all the fire chiefs. Run the names by them. Maybe you'll learn some information. Maybe you won't, but at least you tried. How about some psychological screenings? There's the Arson screening and prediction system out there that was developed by the Southern Group of State Foresters. You know, that's another option. Have some fingerprints on file. We need to monitor the activities of our personnel, and that's through maintaining adequate records, right? And the adequate records are comprised of personnel attendance and training, the fire incident reports, the investigation reports. You know, I'm always curious to find out, you know, who makes the phone call, who makes the 911 call, who's the first arriving firefighters at the station, things like that. It could be nothing, but then again, it could be something. Support mandatory state certifications for firefighters, including recruit training on firefighter arson. This is a very important topic, and it needs to be included in recruit training as well. So what are some actions to take when a problem is suspected? You want to immediately notify the chief of the department involved. If this is not possible because the chief may be a suspect or for other reasons, you may confide in other fire service or law enforcement officials that you know and trust for guidance. Do not ignore it. You need to take action. Notify local law enforcement agency. Call your local Crime Stoppers program is another option. If you suspect an individual but do not have specific proof, pass the information on to law enforcement officials anyway. You don't need to prove anything. If your gut tells you that something is not right, chances are something is not right. So you need to share your feelings and opinion with someone that can make a difference. And that someone is law enforcement. So there you see the Michigan Arson Prevention Committee, they offer a reward. That's not uncommon. We do the same thing here in Pennsylvania. So actions to take when a problem is suspected. Observe if there are any changes in the trends that arouse your suspicions. Is it the same person, same firefighter that arrives first on station? He's the first guy in the jump seat. He's the first guy packed up. He's the first guy pulling the line, things like that. If you do not wish to confront the individual, notify local law enforcement agency. You need to understand the difference between being a snitch and a whistleblower. A snitch gets information that's private and or embarrassing to someone. They report it to the supervisor for personal gain. So in a situation like this, if you got some information about a firefighter setting a fire and you tell someone, you are not a snitch, because there's no personal gain in you taking that action. So a whistleblower is a valuable, dedicated employee who discovers problems in work quality, safety, or legal compliance and reports them to someone who can correct the matter. That would be you. You would be a whistleblower. You would be a whistleblower. So that action you're taking, could definitely save lives and property in the future. So what are the reasons to take action against firefighter arsonists? Because it's an unlawful act. It violates the ethical mission of the fire service, right? The firefighters and fire service, they are to save lives and protect property, right? Not destroy property and endanger lives. There you got it. Protect lives and property against unfriendly fire. So let's wrap this up and do a quick case study. So you're a member of the county's fire investigation task force and have been called to the scene of a fire in a vacant house. It appears that a pile of trash in the exterior of the house was burning. Okay. There you have it. Looks like a fire on the outside of the house. Looks like somewhat minimal damage. The fire occurred early on a Saturday morning, about 2:15 in the morning. Examination of the area of origin indicates that no accidental ignition sources were noted, right? So there's no potential electrical fault or failure there. There's no lightning strikes. There's nothing crazy going on there. So, and you believe that an open flame was utilized to ignite available combustible materials. Examination of the fire department's report indicates that there have been 4 other fires within a 4-block radius of the current incident. 2 of them were trash dumpsters. 1 was a brush fire, and the other was an abandoned vehicle. All of the fires occurred within the last 6 months. Except for the brush fire, all of the fires in the area had occurred between 1 and 3 o'clock. None of the fires were investigated. In interviewing one of the members of the department, you discover that on all the fires, the same 3 firefighters were the first to arrive at the station. This was unusual since none of the 3 lived close to the firehouse. After interviewing the 3 firefighters who were first at the station, the weakest link gave it up and confessed to starting the fire. So what were some of the indicators that would lead someone to believe that this was a case of firefighter arson? Think about it. We've been chatting about it for nearly 2 hours now. You should have a pretty good handle on it. So let's review. An increase in nuisance fires, right? And they were escalating. They all occurred in the cover of darkness at night. No one calls for an investigation, and the same 3 faces were first at the fire station. All right. So taking action against the problem is the only practical way to reveal illegal conduct or major abuses of public authority. Taking action, that's what we need to do. And taking action is the highest form of loyalty to the fire service and its mission. It's not going to go away. It's not going to correct itself. Even if the firefighter that is setting the fire, that setting the fire, leaves the fire service, chances are they're going to continue setting fires. And rest assured, when that person is arrested and charged for these fires, he's going to be referred to as a former firefighter. So taking action against this problem is essential to public interest, right? We need to stop these fires and stop putting lives in danger. It's morally justified as a means of preventing or correcting a firefighter arson problem is to take action. You know, make no mistake about it. Every profession has its bad apples, from police officers to counselors, to priests, to principals. Every profession has its bad apples, but we in the fire service need to essentially clean up the fire service and take care of our own fire service. So being proactive in exposing a problem, thereby diluting the negative image of the fire service. You know, this program was rolled out in 2007 and is responsible for numerous firefighter arson arrests. And there were a number of officers that sat through this very same program that reached out to me after sitting through the program with information that subsequently led to cases of firefighter arson and arson arrests. So taking responsibility and showing courage, you know, make no mistake about it. It is not easy. It is not easy to go to law enforcement or to go to one of your fire officers and say, listen, one of your fellow firefighters you believe is responsible for setting fires. That is not easy. But that is taking responsibility and showing courage. So remember, non-action only gives victory to criminal action. Proper conduct and failure to the fire service in serving the public. That's non-action. We need to take action, my friends. So let's not sweep this trash under the carpet. Let's not ignore it or make believe it does not exist, because it does. And you need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Okay. So back in 2008, Paul Coombs did this particular drawing. And you could see on the headline of the newspaper there, public trust another firefighter charged with arson. You know, he's holding a firefighter's hero, and, you know, the little guy saying, I'm running out of role models. And you could see all the false heroes in the trash can, you know, the football player, basketball, baseball, bicyclist. So that was a big disappointment. So I actually reached out to Paul and commended him on that. And subsequently, this one came out a couple months later. And, you know, once again, the headlines of the newspaper: firefighter burned, child dead in apparent arson fire. Firefighter suspected of starting blaze. And there you see the devil. Yes, we have a very special place set aside just for them. So, you know, when I talked to Paul after he did this latest one, he said, Dave, he said, I really didn't have a good grasp on how frequent these cases are. He said it's very disturbing. So I certainly agree with him. So for more information on the Hero Zero Firefighter Arsonist program, you could reach out. You can reach out to us on the website, which is www.paai.org, and that stands for the Pennsylvania Association of Arson Investigators. You'll see a link there for the Hero Zero Firefighter Arsonist. Thank you for your time.
Dave, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Just some of the background on how this program came to DCARI. Dave had reached out to me a couple weeks ago and had asked about, you know, how does DCARI do what they're doing, and like some logistical things in the back. And in our discussion, we're like, well, would you give us the opportunity to present this on our platform? And Dave took it back to his board, and his board approved it. So we do have a 10-question test that Dave has come up with those questions. And once you take that, the certification, or I'm sorry, not a certification, the certificate of of attendance actually has the Pennsylvania IAAI or the Arson Investigative Units seal in the background. Then we have a little caption in there about DCARI as well. So the certificates that you've received for the 17 other classes, it'll look a little bit different. It'll have the Pennsylvania watermark on it. Dave, we're going to bring you back for a live Q&A. People will be able to shoot you some questions. We'll put your contact information up. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. I have a fire service background, and it's very frustrating and disheartening to think that some of our fellow firefighters could do this. But clearly, it's happening, and something that we should talk about it and to share. So, again, Dave, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Bill.